Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. We're so glad that you're able to join us today. My name is Donna Aufdenberg, and I'm your host for today. I'm located down in Cape Girardeau in the southeast portion of the state. And down here, we're pretty wet. And compared to some of the other places in the state, I know that drought is hitting some of the areas, or it's progressing towards that. So we're still very fortunate down here that the rains keep coming. We have a lot of great information for you today. As always, definitely keep those questions and pictures coming so that we have plenty of information to offer every week. And I will put the map up real quick. So take a look and see who's closest to you. That is your local horticulturist. If it is in an opening or a vacant spot, just look to the next person, and that will be the person that you will contact. We will share this map again towards the end of the program. So, if you don't get a good look, you have a chance a little later. Peng Tian has changed his names to ask your questions here. So if any time during this program you have questions, please go to ask your questions here and make sure to put your email address in there, especially as we get towards the end of the program. That way, if we run out of time, we can still contact you and get you the answer that you need. So right now, we are going to start with our weather report from Tony Lupo, and so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I'll get the share screen and then we'll start the slideshow. And what I have today is, of course, a mixed bag. We've had some rain, and I'll talk about that and where, but drought still continues. And again, it's kind of, we're on the edge as to whether it's going to be a good summer or not. So I'm going to be a little bit cagey about the summer. Yesterday was cloudy for a lot of areas. The sun came in later. Temperatures were in the mid 60s through most of Missouri. If you had some sun, it was a little higher than that. Today, of course, we're seeing 70s as the rule. To near 80 should be the rule by the time all is said and done today. So a nice day for mid-May. And when we look at the surface map, got some interesting things happening, not only here, but elsewhere. For the last week, it seems like we've had a lot of weak fronts sitting in the plain states, and they have finally moved on by the weekend to over the Mississippi Valley, and they are finally moving out of our area. This cold front in the north is interesting because it's going to bring temperatures down into the mid-20s in the lee of Lake Ontario. I grew up there, so I'm kind of interested in that. But mid-20s in mid-May. So dew point temperatures across Missouri as of yesterday, you saw that the higher values, 60s and 70s, are where human comfort begins to decline. And that's all in the southeast. The dew points are a little better here in the Midwest. Aloft, we're seeing two troughs, one in Alaska, one in the mid-Pacific. These two things are going to link up and merge. And what that's going to do is put a large ridge over the western part of North America and a large trough over the eastern part. And it's going to leave us in the middle. And so our temperatures should be fairly moderate for this time of year. And I think we will see one rain event toward the end of the week. In the end, what we've seen in the last 30 days, all right, we've seen some rains again across the southern part of the state. So yes, you guys are not as bad off as the rest of the state, but we received some in Boone County, and that island of dry in the middle of Missouri is kind of shrunk back toward just south of Kansas City. but still a lot of areas are way down in their precipitation across the state. Again, in the south, you're not too bad, but you had such a surplus there that it's that this recent shortfall's not hurting you at all. I'm going to bring up CocoRa's today. CocoRa's is a community collaborative rain, hail, and snow network. Some of you may already be a part of this, but if you're not and you have a rain gauge and you're measuring precipitation once a day, consider joining us. There's the link for it right up here, and we'll put it in the chat box afterwards. But consider joining CocoRa's. It's the third link down. It showed that Sunday and Monday, all right, Sunday's on the left, Monday's on the right. Sunday and Monday, east of Route 65, we got some decent rains that brought some relief to a lot of folks. If you're west of Route 65, you didn't get nearly as much relief, especially up in the northwest part of Missouri. But that's again par for the course with the way storms have been going this year. But mid-Missouri got some of the relief that it needed. So if you're curious about CocoRa's, it's in here. Again, I'll put that in the chat link. But if you're not a part, please do, because we have hundreds of people a day reporting for Missouri conditions. We are still behind, and this is, of course, last week's drought map. The new one won't come out till tomorrow, so we'll see how much of an impact those rains really have. I'm not projecting that it's going to be a lot, because again, drought is something we get into slowly and we come out of slowly. So there may be some small improvements here and there, but probably not much change. Again, traveling the four corners of the state and the middle of the state, May we're running well above normal precipitation. In Columbia, we actually caught up to normal for May, but you can see that throughout the rest of the spring, we're way down. And you're seeing a similar story on the four corners of the state: above normal temperature, below normal precipitation, except for Springfield right now is above normal for May. So you've had some relief in that respect. What has changed? The patterns changed again, and this time I'm showing three maps: early April, late April, and early May. We saw this change from a ridge pattern to this ridge trough ridge pattern, and now we're back to, in this last week, a ridge pattern over the central United States. Again, I don't like the look of that, but that's where we're at right now, and I think it's going to bring us some dry weather this week. And this is the difference in normal, the pressure from normal aloft. Again, above normal pressures in the beginning of April, then we went below normal for late April, and now for mid-May, most of North America's back to being above normal, and quite a bit above normal. So again, this is going to bear watching in terms of wetness versus dryness. Again, I think there's going to be a precipitation event toward the end of the week here, and it probably will bring more precipitation to southern areas of the state than northern, probably even more to the southwest. At least that's what the models are showing us from today until next week. The parts of the northern parts of the state may get less depending on what kind of precipitation you get, whether it's showers or thunderstorms, and whether it's localized or widespread. This, again, I've been showing the latest summer outlook, but we're about to get a new one here by next week. I'd be curious to see if people are changing their minds about the summer precip. 6 to 10 day outlooks. It's above normal across most of the northern tier of states, including Missouri. Again, where it's dry, you're going to just see above normal temps. That unfortunately happens, since most of the sun's energy will go into making it hotter rather than evaporating water. Below normal for precipitation, as we'll be under high pressure for a while. The 3-week outlook for the end of the month and into June, showing above normal temperatures. But this is what I like to see: above normal precipitation in the Rockies and the plains, because a lot of times, since this is upstream of us, we may benefit from some of this. So I'm kind of glad to see this large area where they think it'll be above normal. I'm thinking that they're thinking that the summer monsoon season, which usually sets in for the Southern Rockies, it's going to set in a bit early this year. And if that does, that would be helpful for us. The weather forecast, let's tour the state again. Today, sunny, easy, highs in the upper 70s to low 80s in most places. Tonight in the north, you'll be in the low 50s to upper 50s south of I-70. Tomorrow is when the next system starts to move in. You should start to notice clouds across the northwest and north part of the state moving southeast. Highs should be in the low 80s for most people across the state. And if you're in Northwest Mo, you may see scattered showers and thunderstorms by late afternoon. Thursday night, most of us should be seeing scattered showers and thunderstorms. And it looks like lows will range from about 58 to 63. So upper 50s to low 60s north to south. Then Friday, everybody's going to see some showers and thunderstorms scattered across the state. Highs in the low to mid 70s in the northern part of the state. But if you're below I-44, you may see something a little warmer, up into the low 80s even. Friday night, that cold front comes through, and by Saturday morning, some of you in the north will see as low as upper 40s, then lower 50s to upper 50s as you go southward. Again, clouds will start pulling out from northwest to southeast as they did when they came in. So some of you may not clear out until Saturday morning if you're in the boot heel, and that's detailed here. But most places on Saturday should see sunny and low 70s. Saturday night, upper 40s in the north again to low 50s elsewhere. So a little bit of relief if you want to open up those windows and get the air out of your house and recycle it. Sunday, again, clear, high in the upper 70s to near 80s, but lows in the middle 50s. Then Monday and Tuesday, I'm seeing clear skies, upper 70s on Monday to low 80s, and then Tuesday low to mid 80s, and then low temperatures in the upper 50s Monday night to around 60 Tuesday night. I will state quickly that last week we had predicted that the beginning of the week would be clear. It was not. So that's the danger as you get further away from today. The forecasts are a little shakier, and maybe we can hope that this will be wrong again, and we'll get some rain later. But that's the forecast as of now. So, any questions?
I guess there aren't. Thank you, Tony. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Dhruba. He is going to be your moderator today.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dhruba Dhakal. I'm a field specialist in horticulture housed in Cole County, and I'm serving multiple counties in East Central region. So we received a question this week. I am going to read that question here, and our colleague, Dr. Tamra Reall, will answer that question. So the question is, what tree would be good for a landscape area that is about 6 feet diameter of a circle area and next to the two-story house? So roots might be a concern, and it is facing south, so gets full sunlight. Would like a suggestion that bee or birds would like that tree. Tamra, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Dhruba. So this is a great question. I'm really glad that they're asking me before they're planting instead of just finding something at the nursery and bringing it home and hoping that it will work. So we want kind of a smaller tree. We want one that is going to be able to handle the full weight of the sun and the heat of the sun on a summer day. So I came up with a list of several trees that can be shorter, that are going to have flowers, are going to have fruit, or they're going to be able to provide some sort of habitat for birds as well as other pollinators. All right, let's get started. So the first one I have on here is flowering crabapple. Now, there are lots of different varieties of crabapple, and there's a ton of different flowers. So these can be absolute showstoppers when you see them in bloom in the summer. They can have white, pink, almost red. And then in the fall, they'll get these little fruits. They're called crab apples. They're like tiny little apples, and they really are beautiful. They can persist into the winter if the birds don't quite eat them. So it actually can be decorative throughout the year. It's a great plant. There's lots of different varieties. Some of them can be anywhere from 7 to 10 feet. Most of them are going to be anywhere from 15 to 20 feet tall. Another tree is fringe tree. This is just a really beautiful tree. I like it. It's often a shrub, but you can actually grow it like a tree. Some of them can get all the way up to 33 feet, but usually they're going to be quite a bit smaller than that. You can grow them many different ways. Since it is a shrub, you're going to have more control of it. So you can make it so it's a single stem, or you can make it a multi-trunk. I happen to like them when they're multi-trunks, and then you're just able to prune them and make them how you want them. These flower anywhere from April to May, and they just have these beautiful, delicate, drooping bundles on their plants. Interestingly enough, we do have a native smoke tree that actually can be confused for fringe tree. The one that is in this picture here is not one of our natives. It's a popular variety with purple leaves, but it's just a really beautiful tree, different than what you would typically see. They kind of have these feathery, dusty clusters that are finer and are not actually the flowers like it would have been for fringe tree. And so it's just another unique type of tree that you might consider. Flowering dogwood is another one. We do have some native varieties, and then there's some cultivated varieties as well. Flowering dogwood is actually Missouri's official state tree, and it can just be absolutely beautiful in the spring. And then it has some really deep red, almost purple foliage in the fall. Just a really beautiful tree that can be a great specimen tree, or you can have multiple of these trees. Like I said, there's different kinds of colors. Our native tree is going to have white flowers, but there's some with pink and almost red flowers. Serviceberry is one of my favorite trees. So it's also known as Juneberry, shadbush, sarviceberry, sarvice tree, shadblow, sugar plum, lots of different names, but it's this really beautiful small tree. It could be considered a shrub as well, but it's going to depend on how you prune it. Native tree, it has a lot of value for our wildlife. It has edible fruit. It's one of the first trees that is in bloom, just a really beautiful tree. It usually gets to about 35 to 40 feet. So it's going to be taller out of the trees that I'm presenting here, but it's often smaller than that. So you're going to get a bit of a range, but it's just a really wonderful tree. This next one you might not have thought about, but sumac could actually be used. I've seen sumac used really well in landscapes. We have several different varieties. I think we have 4 different species of sumac here in Missouri. We have fragrant, we have winged, it's also called dwarf or shining sumac, smooth sumac, and staghorn sumac. These have just spectacular leaves in the fall. During the summer, you're going to see these, the fluorescence. Just a really unique, interesting shrub to use also in your landscaping. And finally, I'm going to end with elderberry. Elderberry is a native plant that we have here. It can be a shrub anywhere from 8 to even 12, or even up to 15 feet. I've seen some pretty large elderberries. Again, with it being a shrub that can be pruned as a tree, it can be just really beautiful, and it gives you quite a bit of control for a small bed. It does have these just really beautiful, very fragrant flowers, and then you'll have berries that you can eat as well as share with wildlife. There are some cultivated varieties out there. This is one that has almost black leaves and pink flowers. So you have a lot of variety, a lot to choose from to try and come up with a tree or a tall shrub in this small area that's also going to be beneficial for the birds and the bees. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Tamra. So I see a question in the chat box, Tamra. So the question is, will crepe myrtle do well in the Kansas City area? So you can also look in the chat box. So
yeah, that's crepe myrtle. That is another good one. It's kind of on the border of whether it's going to really do well. I believe it goes down to zone 5, and here in the Kansas City area, we're zone 6A. So it should be able to work. You might need to give it a little bit protection for younger plants if we're going to have a really deep freeze. I actually just planted some in my yard, so I'm excited to see what it does.
All right, thank you so much, Tamra. So our next speaker is Dr. Peng Tian. Dr. Tian is a assistant professor and plant diagnostic clinic director at MU Plant Diagnostic Clinic in Colombia. So he will talk about a sick plant. So Peng, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen. All right. Dhruba, can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to I See Sick Plants. You guys did a great job last week. I was so impressed. This week, I have a really interesting sample to show you. As you can see, this is a set of photos of Japanese maple, I'm sorry. And many people are really big fan for this plants. We saw many people use them as home ornamental landscape use. And I received this photo last week. The client is asking for the spots on the leaves. As you can see that the yellow spots all over the leaf actually through the entire tree. In some leaves, there are little spot and there are bigger spot. Some are round, some are irregular shape, and some even cause damages on the patio and some small twigs. So as you can see that the damage are pretty uniform through the whole plant. So based on all the observations and what could be the cause? What do you think? I'm gonna start a poll to let you pick your best guess. So here are 8 options. Yeah, thank you, Jared. I give you 30 seconds. Yeah, I saw there's definitely a standout winner. Now, I think it's still changing. Thank you so much for the participation. Okay, I give it 5 more seconds. Okay, I got it. So now I'm gonna share the results. So half of the participants pick the fungus. When we pick a fungus, we had to think about if there's any fungal structure growing on that. So looks like the spots are really smooth. I didn't see anything grow out. At the same time, we're pretty dry in the past few weeks. Fungal infection normally favor those the weather with high humidity, same as bacteria. So at this moment, we can rule out fungus and bacteria. Let me review the results. This is actually the power washing damage. So I talked with the clients and they mentioned to me that they just did the power washing to their house. As you can, the water splash with the high power can definitely cause some physical injury. So I consider the physical injury as the top one factor causing the symptoms. At the same time, people use different chemical or detergent or bleach to mix into the water and make a solution for washing their house. And there's a possibility, and the plant may also suffer some chemical exposure, especially you saw those yellow, the spot with the yellow margin, which can be confused with the bacterial leaf spots. But as you can see, it's throughout the whole plant. That make me think, it could be abiotic factors. To avoid this type of damage in the future, first, do power washing carefully, avoid all the canopy, avoid all the plants, especially the ones with really large canopy or with lots of foliage. Second, use plant covering before performing the power washing. The third one, based on the experiments, using detergent is actually better than using bleach. 10% is good enough, but you may want to water the plant before the washing so that the plant was highly hydrated before the power washing. And right after power washing, you may consider rinsing on the foliage or the canopy of the plant to reduce the damage of the chemical exposure. That's all I have. Thank you for the voting. I see you next week.
All right, thank you, Peng. I don't see any question here in the chat box. So if we get more question, then we will ask him. Okay. So our next speaker is again Dr. Tamra Reall. So Tamra will talk about friend or foe, and she will also talk about the garden steward class she is going to offer in the coming weeks. So Tamra.
Fantastic. All right. So you guys should be able to see the friend or foe at this point. Let me see if I can't bring up our poll. And I want you guys to tell me, is this a friend or a foe, or maybe neither, or it depends. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. All right, you have about 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Get your last votes in really fast. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and let's find out. Okay, here are the results. We have a lot of foes and it depends. You guys are on to me. I do a lot of it depends, and let's find out. Okay, so for today, I said this one is a foe. So this is a thrips. These are very, very tiny insects. They have 4 feather-like wings. Thrips can actually transmit viral diseases, most importantly, tomato spotted wilt virus. So there are a couple species of concern. There's the western flower thrips and greenhouse thrips. The western flower thrips can have 3 color forms. They could be white and yellow with brown spots at the top of the abdomen. Sometimes they have a dark orange thorax and brown abdomen, and some are dark brown. These colors can actually vary depending on the stage of development and the time of year. And these thrips actually feed on the enclosed tissues like growing tips, the buds, and even flowers. They can also feed on pollen and on spider mites. So these are greenhouse thrips here. They're tiny, or they can be this yellowish color. They could also be black. They also have the feathery wings. Now, thrips feed by scraping the surface of the leaf, and they will make it look like it's weather dried or like you are going through a drought. If you look at them closely with a hand lens or close up, it looks like it has this dirty appearance where they're feeding. And this could be because of the droppings, eggs and such. So they're just, it just kind of gives it like it's just kind of dirty. So a little bit more about these thrips. Thrips are interesting. So they have, first of all, it's always thrips. Even if you have one or if you have 100, it's always thrips. It's always plural. This S is always there. So to take care of them, prevention is always the best policy here. You need to have a thrips management program. This is both for home gardening and for commercial gardens. First, inspect the plants to be sure that you're not bringing thrips home. Look for signs of the thrip damage before bringing them home into your garden or into a greenhouse. For greenhouses, it's also good to have a holding area or quarantine them to make sure that they aren't bringing thrips in, because once you have them, they can be very difficult to get rid of. So inspecting plants frequently can help you detect pest problems early. You'll want to be checking your plants when you're in your garden. You might need to have some sticky cards out there so that you can be checking for them that way. Just a good idea to keep watching for them. Often when growers are struggling with thrips, it's because they came in with tomatoes and they got established on tomatoes early. So those sticky cards can be really helpful. You might, in a greenhouse situation, you might actually have to spray pesticides. You might have to apply pesticides. In a home gardening situation, not so much, though there are some that can be available. I'm going to put a link in the chat that will give more information about control for them. But this is an interesting pest. I also just want to give a little bit more information about a class that I actually am having. It starts tomorrow. This is the Garden Steward program. You may have heard about it before. It's been a great program. For those who have gone through the Extension Master Gardener program, this one covers some of the same topics, but it goes into more depth on others. And for those of you who may not have gone through the Extension Master Gardener program, probably because you don't have time to go through a 3-month class or have time for the volunteering, this is a good option because it's 5 weeks and there is no volunteering requirement, but it's a great class. You can see down here, we talk about site assessment, we talk about vegetable gardening, ornamental gardening, insects and integrated pest management, and then we bring it all together with pollinator habitat and environmental stewardship. So if you have any questions, please let me know. It does start tomorrow. The sessions are recorded so that you can watch it at any time or you can participate live. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tamra. Pong, do we have any question for Tamra or any other speaker? Okay, so I hear none. So our next topic is about the lawn issue. So our colleague, Dr. Manoj Chetri, is going to talk about this. So Manoj, please go ahead.
Thanks, Dhruba. Let me share my things here. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, let's talk some of the lawn issues that we can see in this springtime. Just to start off with the fertilizers, if you have cool season lawns like Kentucky bluegrass or perennial ryegrass, tall fescue, then you don't have to add any fertilizers in the month of May. You do that in the month of March and April. But if you have some warm season lawns for the folks in southern Missouri, central Missouri, like Georgia grass and Bermuda grass, then you do fertilize those lawns in the summertime or the late springtime. So the rate will be about anywhere from 1 pound of nitrogen to 4 pounds of nitrogen per year per 1,000 square feet. So you split those rates every month on the month of May, June, July, and August. If you have low maintenance lawn, you can just do 1 or 2 pounds nitrogen as well. For the weeds control, if you have listen my earlier session on crabgrass, we do control crabgrass weeds with crabgrass preventer, or what we call pre-emergent herbicides. Generally, those herbicides will stop those weeds from emerging. For those grassy weeds like crabgrass, spraying herbicides after they have emerged will not be very effective. And also they are very costly products if you want to spray those grassy weeds after they have already emerged. Yes, those crabgrass and other grassy weeds have emerged on your lawn sometime in the mid of April, right? Now you can see those grassy weeds if you have those crabgrass on your lawns. So if you are thinking of killing those with some herbicides, then that can be very costly. And also the products that are available for the homeowners, they are not very effective and guaranteed to control. So you better not spray on crabgrass now if you are homeowners. For commercial applicators, that can be an option. There are some products, but I'm not going to go into that. But if you have, or if you're struggling with other kinds of weeds like clover, dandelions, chickweeds, which we call broadleaf weeds, then they can be managed by post-emergent herbicides, which we spray on them. And now we can do that in springtime, also in fall time. And I'll talk that a little bit more detail later on. But another important thing in managing turf grass is mowing, right? We have to mow your lawn if you want to maintain a healthy, dense turf, because you want to promote that tillering, you want to promote that density and new growth. That's how we can maintain that ground cover, that permanent, persistent turf. And the general rule of thumb for mowing is every time you go out and mow, you only remove 1/3 of the grass. For example, when your grass reaches to a height of 3 inches, then you can only mow top 1 inch, so that you will have 2-inch height. That's how we maintain our 2-inch mowing height. Okay, you'll only mow when your grass reaches 3 inches to maintain the mowing height of 2 inches. Now, if you have cool season lawns, generally we recommend mow 3 inches or higher. So in that case, for example, here in the last bullets I have mentioned, when your grass reaches 4.5 inch height, or when your grass is 4.5 inch tall, you just remove 1.5 inch. That way you will have 3 inch tall grass every time you finish the mowing. Okay, if you do less than that, then you have to go more often. If you do more than that, then you'll put the grass under stress. So you don't want to remove more than 1/3 of the grass height. You will put grass under stress and it will not do well. Okay, another thing I want to talk about for the folks who have warm season lawn in southern Missouri, like Georgia grass and Bermuda grass, is winter injury. If you have those warm season lawns and sometime in the late April and May, those should be greened up. But if you have not seen good greening up on your lawns, on the warm season lawns, then probably you have some problems there from winter injury. So winter injury is basically from the cold temperature that we have in the early, late winter, but also that these cold temperatures are aggravated by your winds or no snow cover. So especially in the late season, especially in the early winter, in December time, when we do not have snow cover and have cold freezing temperatures, then that's when your warm season grass is going to suffer damage from winter injury, because those grasses were not ready to go or they were not completely ready to go into winter in the early winter time. So the grass will suffer more damage in the early winter by this low temperature, followed by no snow cover and winds. Also, if you have a shade and traffic and also the slopes is facing more on the north side, then that area will get more damage from the winter temperature. For example, here in the Georgia grass, this is from golf course, but this is facing in the north, which we cannot see clearly in the picture, but that's what the winter damage looks like in Georgia grass or the Bermuda grass. And how do you know? You just know when there's no greening up in the springtime. Okay, another issues I want to talk about is this insect called sod webworm. This belongs to the genera Crambus. And this is the time in month of May, early spring, is the time when these insects become active on your lawns. It becomes a problem in your warm season lawn, but also in cool season lawns. So the most damaging stage of these insects is a caterpillar, like many others. You can see the caterpillar head is slightly darker brown color than the rest of the body. The body has segmented sections, and under each sections you can see 3 dots there that parallel to each other, and that's how we can identify or distinguish these caterpillars from rest. They like to chew on the leaf blades. These are not root feeders. These are actually grass or leaves feeder. They like to chew on blades and the above ground's canopy. And also they are active now, but they will in a month or so they will change to adult moth. So the damage starts in a small patch. You can see some of the chewed leaf blades around the patch, but you will not be sure what's happening there. Is it an insect damage or drought damage or disease? It just looks very close to that, but when you look very closely under the thatch, you might find some caterpillars, and the blades are just look like they are chewed on by something. And you can also find some frass of the insects if you pay more attention to that. But that little patch eventually grows and then coalesce and then become the large patch of dead turf by the mid of the spring and early summer. Your Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrass are more sensitive to this damage. Your tall fescue are more tolerant compared to these other cool season. Again, this is a sun-loving insect, so it's like to be more active in the open sun areas and also in bums and slopes where your water moisture is very low. In that area, the problem starts in the beginning. And also in some of the time, sometimes you can see these small holes, circular holes on the lawn in this dead spot. And those are the tunnels that caterpillars has left because they like to chew those leaf blades and bore a tunnel and bring those verdure down to the tunnels and build their homes and things like that. But overall, you can manage this caterpillar damage. First of all, you need to know if this is, if you need to positively identify and diagnose these insects. And if you know this is a sod webworm, then you can manage mostly by irrigation because they like to be in a place where the soil moisture is low. So if you can irrigate well, then that will be one of the cultural management strategy to manage sod webworm. Of course, good fertility will also help to push your grass and then bear some damage. But if you have severe damage, then you can control those by using insecticides, and pyrethroid-based insecticides will do good job in killing those caterpillars. And this is the time to spray those insecticides if you have sod webworms. And some of the examples are cyfluthrine, bifenthrin, and these are available for the homeowners as well. Let me talk a little bit about the weeds. We often get questions and concerns about the weeds in lawns, but I will just focus today on ground ivy, or we also call that creeping Charlie. And this creeping Charlie, which is on my left side on this screen, looks very similar to other weeds like purple dead nettle in the center, and then the right side I have henweed. In contrast, your henweed and purple dead nettle, these are winter annuals. So they die every year and come back from seeds. But your ground ivy is a little bit complicated because it's a perennial. It comes from seeds and also from stolons, and that makes this very hard to control and manage on the lawns and other flower beds. So yes, it is perennial. It's expressed by stolons and seeds both, like I said, and that's how we can distinguish actually these ground ivy from other like henweeds and purple dead nettle by identifying the vines. If you see these vines or runners, then that's how we can distinguish this from other weeds. In each, when you see these vines, and when you notice that, look carefully at these vines, at each node, they have these two or a pair of stems coming out in opposite directions, and we call that opposite pattern. And also in each node, it will produce roots. So that's what makes this grass or weed very hard to control, because when you try to pull it up, it will break on that nodes because it develops roots, and that's how it spreads and take control of the lawn very rapidly and aggressively as well. And also this is a very low growing prostate growth habit. And so when you wanna control that by running mowers, your blades will not catch these weeds because they are very low growing. And so mowing has very minimal effect in controlling these weeds. Interestingly, this is a very low fertility and shade loving weeds. If you have poor drainage and your wet and damp areas, then you can see more problems of ground ivy in those areas. So having said that, then how do we manage this is if you can improve surface drainage, then you can control this ground ivy much better than on this poorly drained soil. For that, you also have to think about irrigation. So if you irrigate more frequently and keep your lawns wait for the frequently, then that will bring more problems for ground ivy as well. So if you do deep irrigations, infrequent irrigations, that's the one way to control those weeds. Also, speaking of improving drainage, you can also incorporate core aerations once in a year, every fall. Whenever you want to manage weeds in general, including ground ivy, we recommend mowing your grass higher, at least 3 inches or above. Also, your proper fertilizers, meaning applying fertilizers right amount at right time, spring and fall, will help promote or improve your canopy of the turf, and then will not facilitate or stimulate these weeds growth in summertime. So you want to avoid fertilizers in summertime. Also, managing or reducing shade, if you can trim branches of the tree or shrubs to help turf grass receive more sunlight, then that will help to grow more turf and less weeds. Another tried and trusted method is hand pulling of ground ivy, but it's a very tedious job for sure. Or you can also do raking. But early in the spring, when your weeds are young and growing, just growing, then if you can do hand pulling and raking, that will be most effective than doing now or later in the summertime. So if you want to do hand raking or hand pulling, then early spring or in the fall time, you can do that. So that will help. These all cultural management strategy are very important if you want to manage ground ivy. But there are some herbicide options as well. And I have listed some pre-emergent herbicides here just for the reference, but these herbicides has to be applied early in the season in March and April. So we already missed that window. So there's no point of talking now. But if you have spread those, then they will not provide 100% control or complete control, because remember, this ground ivy is perennial, so they spread from stolons as well. So you have to spray herbicides if you want to get complete control of ground ivy. Some of the herbicides that we have is 2,4-D, dicamba. They are effective herbicides for ground ivy. But if you can find a product that has combination of 2,4-D, dicamba, and MCPP, these 3 combination product works much better than the single product. And another product in the market that you can find for the homeowners is triclopyr as well. And these 2 products are recommended products to control ground ivy for sure. The spring time is best timing is the fall timing in spring and October. But if you have ground ivy problems, then you can also do that by spraying now in the spring in May. But in the June time, I would not recommend that, because by that time your weeds are too big to be killed by the herbicides. So do not spray in summertime, and you have to wait until September if you miss this window. With all the products, just follow the labels for mixing direction and handling. That will be all for my side. If you have any questions, please drop on the chat box, and thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Manoj. It is very good and timely information. So our next topic is about the boxwood damage or shrub and tree damage. And Donna Aufdenberg is going to talk about that. Donna, please go ahead.
So we've had lots and lots of calls about winter damage on all sorts of shrubs and small trees. And the question I always get is, how can I fix it? And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, is what are your options on some of the damage that we are seeing? First off, I want to address real quick about proper tools. It's always good to have sharp, blades for clean cuts. Anytime we have dull blades, we can have ragged cuts, and it will cause the plants to struggle and not heal as well. So you can use loppers for bigger cuts. You can use bypass pruners, and they're the ones that cut like a scissors. You don't want the ones that are anvil, that is a straight blade that comes down like a T. You want the bypass pruners. Then we can have some small hand saws. The big thing is, if you use anything bigger than that, make sure to use your safety equipment. And I'm talking about chainsaws and things like that. But for today, we're just going to talk about minor pruning. And once again, we talk about this all the time, no pruning paint. These plants will heal on their own. You don't need to cut that or cover that cut surface with anything. And so we find that through research that the pruning paint can be more detrimental than leaving the open wound. Okay, so once we've got that covered, so how can I fix it? Well, there's a couple different ways that you can prune. We have heading cuts and we have thinning cuts. And I like to show these pictures, and you've seen these probably before if you've been with us on previous weeks. These are two that are in my office, in front of my office. One is a heavenly bamboo, which is on the right, and on the left is a shrub rose. And each of these can either have thinning cuts or heading cuts. Heading cuts is when we're taking off the top. So you could take off 6 inches, you could take off 12 inches up to 2 or 3 feet. Whereas the thinning cuts, you're actually removing whole stems to lighten the canopy. Either cuts are fine. The big thing is you want to remove anything that is diseased, broken, dead, growing in the wrong direction. Those are the rules of pruning. And as you can see with these two, the winter damage is extensive on both of these. And so I wish I could magnify the pictures because you could see where the live tissue starts. And so that's what you want to target. Look at where the live tissue starts and the dead tissue stops. And you want to always cut back right before a can't even talk here. You want to always cut before a bud and into the good tissue. And so you never want to try to cut above that where it's dead, because then you'll still have dead canes out. Always cut into live flesh or the live tissue. And same way with the rose. And it's always good if you've had disease issues, especially with roses, make sure to dip your pruners into 10% bleach to avoid spreading those diseases, and make sure to oil your pruners after you've used the 10% bleach solution, because it can be very corrosive. Another way that you can do pruning is through renewal or rejuvenation pruning. And this is taking plants back to the ground or 6 to 12 inches above the ground level. And a lot of plants can handle this. Things like azaleas, privets, abelias, lilacs, spireas, barberries, forsythia, crepe myrtles, and nandinas. And a lot of these plants are the ones that we have seen a lot of damage on this winter. And so if you've got canes that are dead or canes that are just missing lots of foliage, you might consider, heading back canes or pruning out areas that don't look so great. And once again, if the damage is extensive, like what's in the picture right in front of us, well, then that's when you will want to consider pruning back to about 6 inches above the ground level. And like I said, all these plants can handle it. Now, there are some plants that can't handle that. Things like boxwood, junipers, pines, cypress, arborvitae, and yews. All these, if you do extensive pruning, they might not come out of it. They may die. Or if you cut back into the woody part of the plant, they'll be so disfigured, you will not want them. And so you have to take in consideration, should that plant be removed versus just cutting it back. And so even some of our slower growing ones, you might want to take and reconsider, is it worth cutting them back, or is it going to be worth just replacing that plant? I always like the rule of the thirds, because I always say if there's more than 30% dead tissue, you might want to consider replacing that plant. And a good example is that the pictures at the bottom, the left one it does not have that much damage. It's a spot probably about softball size. You might be able to camouflage that. You might be able to prune that out and stimulate some of that growth there. But if you compare it to the one on the right has extensive damage, and that plant's never going to recover. And you cannot prune that out to where that boxwood is going to look right. And so that is where we would encourage you to go ahead and replace that plant. So really, it's up to you what you do in your garden and what you feel comfortable with. But just realize some plants we can salvage and other plants we cannot. We've been hearing a lot about trees. Sycamore's one of them. That's the left-hand picture. Just hold on to some of these plants and just be patient with them. And they're having a hard time coming out. On the right side is a serviceberry that's had some winter damage. And once again, going in there and pruning it and cleaning it up will help that plant recover. And so, yes, take your time, be realistic, allow that time for that plant to recover. Don't be in a rush. I would try pruning first. Remember, always pruning is about removing those broken branches, ones growing in the directions you don't want them to be or diseased or weakened branches. And once again, I can't emphasize this enough. If there's too much damage that has been sustained by that plant, it's just best to go ahead and remove it and replace it. Okay, that's all I have. Back to you, Dhruba.
All right, Donna, thank you so much. So after this talk presentation, so we are done, and I will get back to you, Donna, as you are the host.
Excuse me, I think I have one question.
Okay.
I think one question called, what was a rope tool in the picture? I'm gonna copy and paste to the public. What is a rope tool in the picture? I guess that's a second slide.
Of Donna.
I'm sorry, my internet cut out. What did you say?
What was rope tool in the picture? I guess that's a second slide from your presentation.
The rope is for safety. So if you were cutting a bigger limb, or if you were fearing something was going to fall when you were cutting it, that's when you would have that safety rope.
All right. Thank you, Donna, and I will get back to you.
Okay,
so you are the host. Yeah.
Let me share my screen and get back to where. Okay, so just remember, we're closing out for today. Just remember that these recordings can be found on our YouTube MUIPM page, and so you can find it as the live stream, or you can view a lot of the snippet videos that have been recorded from previous episodes. If you want to save the chat, you can go down to open your chat, go down to the bottom. There's 3 dots at the base, and you click on those 3 dots, and there's an option to save your chat. And so I always like saving the chat because we have all these links there. And so it's good to save those links. And of course, here's our map for it. If you want to look and see who's closest to you, who would be your local extension person. And then if you want to ask questions in the future, always remember you have to go back to the registration page and re-register and ask your questions there. And remember that we are back to every Wednesday at noon. And so the next one will be next Wednesday, May 24th. And I will leave it back on the state. So if you need more time to look at the map, you can. So I'm hoping that everybody enjoys the rest of their day and enjoy this beautiful weather.